Brett, man, first off, super honored to have you on the show, man. I've admired your journey as I was, saying off camera and excited to learn more about, your background, some of the stuff that you're doing within the sports investing space. But I want to start here and talk about how you first got into, investing in the sports landscape. Was there like a defining opportunity or moment that happened that really helps you kind of see this as a viable opportunity?
Yeah, no, for sure. And first of all, what an honor to spend some time with you and be on your show. So thank you. Yeah, the defining moment, the epiphany, as I refer to it, was 2014, watching an MLS Cup championship. I think it was LA Galaxy was playing the Dynamo, and in short, during that game, Don Garber, the commissioner, at halftime, as he usually does, goes through the expansion of MLS, and the quick story is that he didn't mention Phoenix, and I was quick to kind of recognize that Phoenix, Arizona, from my vantage point, was probably the best market without an MLS team, and that then led to me ultimately realizing that there was a league called United Soccer League, which at the time, anyone who kind of studied the soccer landscape at that time, the pathway to MLS was coming through the USL, United Soccer League. So long story short, I bought a USL franchise in Phoenix. It was called Arizona United. I rebranded that to Phoenix Rising, and I brought in an incredible group of partners, most of whom are based in Phoenix. I'm actually based in Los Angeles. And then one of my partners, Bear Vakai, who I'm partners with in Ipswich, I'm partners with on a bunch of other ventures, including we're about to make a considerable investment in a youth soccer platform. But in short, Berkay convinced Didier Drogba of Chelsea and Ivory Coast fame to join Phoenix Rising, which was quite a coup, and kind of literally and figuratively put that franchise on the map, if you will.
For sure. And you talk about having these different roles and operating clubs in different leagues. Ipswich Town, which is obviously based in the UK, is a very different market from being based in Phoenix. So can you kind of talk about your approach and the differences in investing in maybe a team in a different country as opposed to one that's located here domestically?
Yeah. So yeah, obviously, huge difference between the two. I, as far as Ipswich is concerned, I spent 5 years living in London in my 20s, if you will, and kind of fell in love with English football. I mean, I think if you're in soccer, England is the NFL, NBA, and Major League Baseball kind of all wrapped up into one. Certainly the Premier League is, but I mean, look, you can look at, if you will, the Wrexham effect. There's a huge attraction to buying a club in England, and trying to go through, if you will, the gauntlet of getting promoted up. And um, long story short, as Phoenix Rising started to do well, I was really keen on trying to find a way to invest in English football. And the planets aligned where Berkay and I and Mark Detmer were able to partner up with a pension fund out of Arizona. We acquired Ipswich. I think the real coup was getting Mark Ashton to be the CEO. We hired Mark Ashton from Bristol City. He was a great CEO. As I say, he knows more about English football than I will ever know. And we put him in as CEO, and he was instrumental in bringing the right manager, Kieran McKenna, and kind of led to back-to-back promotions. For sake of full disclosure, we're going to be relegated at the end of the season. So, none of it's for the faint of heart,
Yeah.
but nonetheless, we're well ahead of plan in terms of what our aspirations were when we invested in the club. And despite what I'll call the setback, we're very confident we're kind of heading in the right direction with it.
Do you feel like, we're kind of at a bubble when you think about American investors investing in soccer globally? Do you feel like there's still a huge opportunity there? What are what's kind of your take on that?
Yeah, so I still feel, to use a baseball analogy, we're still in the early innings of it. I'm seeing no lack of demand. I'm getting approached by people all the time who are kicking the tires on domestic opportunities, meaning United States, and foreign opportunities. And I guess maybe I didn't properly answer your question. I mean, obviously, to your earlier point, there's a huge difference between buying a 150-year-old club like Ipswich and trying to, as I describe it, restore it to its former glory in the Premier League versus, starting a club in Phoenix through the USL, or, obviously the project behind me is my Rhode Island project. where I now have a USL team that's in its second season. We just this month opened up a $140 million beautiful soccer specific stadium just outside of Providence. The reviews on the stadium have just been exceptional. And as close as I have been to the project, I would say with humility, the stadium's even better than I dreamed it would be. It's really exceptional. And so anyway, I think the opportunities in the sport continue to grow. The interest, both again here in the States and overseas, they're very, very different models, but I still believe that the future is very bright, and there are a lot of great opportunities for the right investors that want to get into the sport to find ways, I believe, to invest at the right price in the right market and be successful.
100%. And obviously, I believe you come from a background in technology or computing, correct?
I used to run a computer accessory company in my first sort of part of my career. But since 2005, when we sold that business, I've had a family office under the umbrella of Benevolent Capital, with my twin brother. I have an identical twin brother, and he focuses kind of on our private equity and venture capital. We're investors in Oura Ring. We're investors in Athletic Brewing, the non-alcoholic beer, the leading non-alcoholic beer. So he does the heavy lift on that, which frees me up to do the heavy lift on sports as an asset class, and by extension in the States, I view it's very symbiotic with developing real estate. The big part of the project behind me is to develop the real estate surrounding the stadium and create a live, work, play destination, and candidly to have a huge social and economic impact behind these projects.
Yeah, for sure. And kind of alluding to that, when you look at building a tech startup or something in a different industry and building a sports franchises, what are some of the parallels or similarities that you have noticed between those different industries, if you will, verticals?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure. That's a great question, man. I'm not quite sure how best to answer it. I mean, what I would say is I've never enjoyed what I do more than I do now. The depth and breadth of the projects that I've been blessed to be associated with, starting with Phoenix, extending to Ipswich, now with Rhode Island, and it's opening up additional opportunities. As I mentioned, this week we're closing on an investment in one of the larger youth soccer platforms in the United States. And I just believe strongly in sports as an asset class. I believe in a host of different positive attributes that are associated with the broader space, whether it's, I love the stadium we now own in Rhode Island. I think that's very valuable. I love all the different technology opportunities that kind of extend from sports, data opportunities, analytics, that the list sort of goes on and on. But I've been very, very focused on what I call kind of rectangular sports as an asset class, and will likely continue to do so. And again, with the utmost respect to the first part of my career, I was blessed to travel all over the world and be involved with some amazing companies and people. I very much enjoy what I think is almost the unparalleled nature of what sports as an asset class can mean to, changing lives kind of on and off the pitch and creating real economic change, positive economic change. I mean, the project in Rhode Island is creating a lot of jobs. The turnaround at Ipswich has really transformed a market that prior to our investment, I think was going the wrong way.
You said rectangular sports as an asset class. What does that mean exactly for people who might not get?
I think I was the one. I think I first coined that. I was on a panel years ago, and I kind of mentioned it. And anyway, I'm not trying to take too much credit for it, but I view rectangular sports. So it's soccer, American football, flag football, it's rugby, it's lacrosse. It's all those rectangular sports.
Got you.
Differently, it's not cricket, it's not baseball. But so I like the stadium behind me in Rhode Island. On the day we opened it, we obviously had Rhode Island FC play there. The very next day, we had a women's professional rugby team compete in the stadium. We've got inbound now. Major League Rugby is going to play their championship there in June. We've got opportunities in talking, relative to lacrosse, and at some point for sure, flag football. You've seen the numbers, what's going on there. and a good sized rectangular stadium in a great location is worth its weight in gold.
I've never thought about that, but that's a really good point because you can fill the stadium throughout multiple seasons. It's not just soccer specific or any sport specific. You actually can have different sports kind of play throughout the year, which can drive a lot, revenue throughout.
Yeah, and before you used to rely, if you will, on maybe a men's professional soccer team.
Hmm.
Now there's a great opportunity to launch a women's professional soccer team. If you start to have men's professional rugby, then obviously you should have women's professional rugby. And then if you have the opportunity, there several local universities in Rhode Island are talking about hosting, Brown University, where I went, we're talking to them about hosting a football game. URI is likely going to be hosting a lot of their football games at our stadium. And then at some point, it becomes a natural extension, obviously, to have flag football, which I believe is the fastest growing women's sport, I believe. And don't kind of quote me on it, but regardless, the numbers are certainly trending in the right direction. And again, a good sized stadium in a great location for that sport, I think, becomes very valuable.
Really cool. What's the first thing you look at or look to improve when you're looking to invest in a team or franchise or even a new opportunity within the sports landscape?
Yeah, so Rhode Island's a good example. It's a great market. And I think it really speaks to the attraction of USL, United Soccer League. USL is the perfect league to bring into a market like Rhode Island. Um, the state had previously a AAA baseball team called the Pawtucket Red Sox, the Paw Sox. That team, a couple of guys locally in Rhode Island bought the team and picked it up and moved it to Massachusetts. And I was very quick when I learned of that news. I was very quick to buy the rights to a USL franchise, go in and meet with the governor, meet with the mayor of Pawtucket where we play. And it was by no means easy to get done, but between the capital I raised and between the support I received from the city and the state, we were able to get a world-class stadium built in a great location, right off the highway, right on the river. I mean, it's truly stunning. At some point, you really need to come visit and see it firsthand. But now that we've done that, as I said, it's kind of really worth its weight in gold. And in New England, there's no soccer specific stadium other than ours. New England Revolution, with the utmost respect to that MLS franchise, they play in an NFL stadium. That at some point the Kraft family I know are trying to figure out how to do a soccer specific stadium, and they're likely trying to find one in and around Boston.
Yeah.
NWSL, the women's team in Boston, they're trying to get something done with a park in Roxbury, Mass. Anyway, I guess it's a long way of saying none of these things are easy, but if you can build the right stadium in the right location and program the right sports in it, especially, I'm just bullish on USL. And I know you've done some posts in the past in terms of how the USL, among other leagues, is growing. And I think, as probably a lot of your listeners are aware, USL has announced the adoption of promotion relegation. They've announced the intent to create what would be a Division One, which is the same level ostensibly of as MLS, but it provides true ability to go up and to go down. And none of it's easy, but we get to that position. I think USL becomes a very compelling league for a lot of reasons as a fan. I think from a media rights perspective, and I think deep-pocketed foreign clubs increasingly look to USL to find ways to have economic connections for a host of reasons, not the least of which is there's a surplus of talent that need quality minutes, and USL could start to provide that.
Hmm. You talked about how difficult it is to build a stadium from the ground up. What are some, I guess, surprises or things that you learned throughout this process that just kind of caught your attention or kind of gained when you started the process of building this arena?
Yeah, I mean, to date the project, we started before the pandemic. And so, to be blunt, the pressures on everyone coming out of the pandemic for a host of reasons, labor shortages, supply chain issues, interest rates, inflation, a war in Ukraine, a period of time with the banking crisis. I mean, a lot of headwinds. We were faced with a lot of headwinds, and the project cost went up considerably, but I say this, as I like to say, with total humility. We stayed with it. We didn't allow anything to derail us. And I'm very pleased that we've done it, because while the cost of the stadium ultimately went up considerably, we opened it. And the reality is, if I look at what it takes to get one of these done now, if we tried to build this stadium, the same exact stadium today, it would be even more expensive. So it's not getting any easier, and it's not getting any less expensive. So now that we have it done, I kind of feel the stadium is worth its weight in gold. And I failed to mention as well, I mean, we've already got international game that we're hosting in June as well, Puerto Rico and Nicaragua. So with World Cup coming up in 26, again, I think a lot of eyes and attention will be placed on well-positioned venues that, again, can just host friendlies and a whole host of different sports options, because not everyone can sell out NFL stadiums.
You talked about some of the venture deals that you all have done as well. What's kind of catching your attention when it comes to sports technology or innovation within the space? Is there any specific verticals that you're most interested in, or kind of taking a bigger interest?
I'm looking at a company now that has a patented technology around JPEG, so photos, where they really allow the rights holders um, to control that content, and to I think turn what's historically been kind of a lost leader into more of a profit center, or clearly at a minimum on their balance sheet, just an asset. So that company struck me as something that I'm still trying to drill down on their IP, but I like that a lot. I, I like wearables. I mean, again, when I first tried Aura, I was blown away with the data that I was getting, and kind of just felt that I needed to find a pathway to invest and to get others associated with me in that. So, but I don't view myself as a venture capitalist in
Yeah.
general, and I don't view myself as a technologist. I mean, I kind of want to stay within what I consider my swim lanes in terms of trying to figure out where to realize success or appreciation in the broader space. And I'm not I've seen tons of things that come across my radar, and I'm not the one who usually is going to be able to tell, is this technology better than another one. I mean, I'll leave
Yeah.
that to people, as I'll say, are far brighter than I am.
So you're not proactively searching for those type of deals or opportunities.
No, I see a lot of them, and again, you know, I'm I can always, I can tell if I like something or I don't like it, but again, I think it takes a particular talent to be able to assess, what I'll say is one technology versus another technology. But I think with the advent of the interest I have in some of these professional teams now, with the investment that I'm making on this youth soccer platform, I think where I have an opportunity is that I have the ability, if we like a certain technology, we can adopt it, and it can be utilized on a far bigger platform than a lot of startups could ever hope to achieve. So, in other words, we have a pretty big market to offer. So at that point, I think the ability for us to go and look at technology and test it out, and then potentially make more educated bets, because again, we've got both professionally and on the youth side a lot of ways to get feedback on whether one technology is better or more responsive than others.
Where do you think the biggest growth opportunities lie within the sports landscape? Whether this is sports or a specific league, where do you kind of see the most upside in the next like 5 to 10 years when you look at the overall global landscape?
Yeah, so I for a while I've been very focused on youth sports, and again, this week we'll close this investment into the largest youth soccer platform, and then immediately we're going to be acquiring kind of the number two player. So we'll rapidly be kind of scaling that up. So in the United States, for better or worse, youth sports is a great asset class. Recurring revenue streams, non-correlated to the broader economy. Um, so I love that. I'm bullish on USL, as I've said. I think the right ownership group in the right market, with the right stadium, with the right surrounding real estate, and selfishly or with humility, I think we've done that in Rhode Island, or we're doing that in Rhode Island. And I think there are a host of others that will emulate that as well. So I think that's another great opportunity. I think there's so many, for those of your listeners out there that want to invest in sports, that want, like, I think there's never been more opportunities for someone, relatively speaking, with what I'll call a modest balance sheet to find ways to get into the different asset classes to invest or roll up their sleeves. Like there are countless examples of it. Not all of them are going to win, and I think you need to be very careful. And I always say none of this stuff is for the faint of heart. But where this whole market is today versus 11 years ago when I first got into it, it's light years. And it used
Mhm.
to 11 years ago, trying to talk to someone about investing in sports was kind of a tough putt. Now it's much, much easier. Families want to be invested in sports, at least some part of their balance sheet. Institutions, private equity, and others are absolutely allocating a certain percentage of it to this broader space. And that's going to continue to go up and to the right. But from my perspective, I love what I'll call the emerging sports. I love the entrepreneurial side of what I get to do. I'm less interested in being an LP in a fund and owning a minority stake of an illiquid major, NFL team. That to me is not too exciting. I think for a lot of people, they've, could sit there and say they're invested in sports, but I'd much rather play it the way that I've been approaching it and others are approaching it than just being a passive LP in a massive fund, again, in an illiquid sports asset.
Yeah, so you like really want to get your hands dirty and be in the trenches and really work in the asset and trying to, actually grow it, being at the forefront.
I think, yeah, for sure. And then what I'd say is all the investors that I brought in, whether it's into Ipswich, whether it's into Rhode Island, Phoenix Rising, there's nothing like being invested in sports. You could put your money into a lot of places, but there really is something intangible about being associated with a team and the connection between, your family, your friends, when you are in that asset. You literally and figuratively know how you're doing every single week relative to, there's a scoreboard. And,
Hmm.
Rhode Island, we were blessed to make it to the championship last year. We won the Eastern Conference. Phoenix has won USL Championship. Ipswich was promoted twice. So I have been very fortunate that more often than not, the teams I've been associated with have done well. And that's, there is some utility to when you put a good product on the pitch, as I say, there's nothing like it.
Hmm.
And if you put your money into an oil well, it can cash flow, but it's not nearly as much fun as
Yeah,
you will seeing your team win on a Saturday night.
for sure, for sure. What advice would you give someone who's looking at sports as an asset class, wants to get in, but is a little skeptical? Like, what would you tell them about this space?
Yeah, again, I guess going back to the fact that I'll just take USL. There are all types of ways now. Like you can buy a League One team, so League One and USL, and directionally I'll be somewhat correct, but I think it's like a $5 million franchise fee. You can. I look at like Omaha. It's an incredible market for USL. The ownership group's done a great job. They were playing in a baseball stadium. They're now going to build a proper stadium. They've won, I think, League One at least twice. They've won championships. But as an example, I mean, getting a group together, finding a good market, launching a team, getting a following, starting connecting to the youth side of it, the boys and girls in that community, finding a pathway for them to have a pathway to being a professional, and then engaging the corporate community, the civic, the philanthropic. Like there's a lot of fun associated with all of this. And again, none of it's for the faint of heart, but on a relative basis, that's not a massive amount of capital versus what it takes to just own a stake of an NFL team or some of these other ones. So, in other words, you can get involved, and I'm just using US and USL example, but I'm sure we've seen opportunities in pickleball. We've seen opportunity. I mean, there are every week something comes across my plate that if someone has the right capital and they want to roll up their sleeves, you can write a check and I think take an active role, a more active role than not. If they're not, a lot of these emerging leagues are not just looking for money, if you will. They want people who want to roll up their sleeves and really become a part of it. So that's an exciting part of it. But again, I'd also say with people have to keep their eyes wide open, just recognizing that these teams, they effectively consume cash all the time. And you got to find as many levers as possible in terms of driving revenue. And that's why I've always felt real estate is such an important component of the overall business opportunity, that if you can have real estate as an asset class associated with it, that's another driver of cash flow that becomes very important in the overall return mix.
Absolutely. Brett, as we wrap up here, I'm curious to know, like, when you think about what motivates you and inspires you to have success in this space, what does that kind of look like? Is it really like building? Is it competing? Is it leaving a legacy? What does that kind of look like for you when you think about kind of what drives you to be successful in the asset class of sports?
Yeah, I mean, I feel really honored. I take a very entrepreneurial approach to all of this. And again, if you look at the arc of my career, if you will, in this space, I saw an opportunity in Phoenix and made something happen. I saw an opportunity in Rhode Island, have made something happen. Saw an opportunity in English football with Ipswich and made something happen. So I feel it's a real blessing to be an entrepreneur who can look at opportunities specifically in sports as an asset class and now start to like literally do all the different moving pieces between raising the capital and working, locally to try to put all these things in motion. And in some respects, for me, 10 plus years into it, the flywheel is getting a little bit easier, if you will. Like the deal that I'm going to close this week on the youth sports investment, I originally reached out to this group 6 years ago and started developing a relationship, and it's now coming to fruition now. So again, these things take a lot of time. They take money, they take relationships, they take patience. But I guess it's just a long way of saying that I feel like there's nothing special about what I've done that anyone else wouldn't be able to do themselves. Like it's all out there for the taking in different sports, different markets, maybe even the same sport. As I said, like again, if someone's out there and said, you know what, I love the idea of USL, believe me, I can help point them to plenty of opportunities in the USL landscape where with the right capital and relationships and motivation, you can, ideally replicate, what we've done in Phoenix, what we've done in Rhode Island.
Brett, man, this has been great. Super inspired by your journey. Lastly, can you let everybody know where they can learn more about you and connect with you?
Yeah, LinkedIn is the best. Always happy to connect and keep in touch. So Brett M. Johnson is the name that I'm on LinkedIn, Benevolent Capital. So no, Malcolm, what an honor and what a pleasure. And thank you for all the great work you do. As I said, you're a must read every single time. Every single time I log into LinkedIn, I'm thrilled that posts are almost always at the top of my feed, but every time I read it. So it's an exciting time to be in this broader space, and it's only going to continue to go up and to the right. And anyway, I welcome anyone who's interested in learning more about how to roll up their sleeves and start to get involved in sports as an asset class. Happy to spend some time and hopefully give them some inspiration or direction in terms of how to make something happen if they really want to.
For sure. That means a lot coming from you. Thank you again, Brett.
Good man. Thank you, my friend.